presume that. Yeah.
Okay.
Excellent. Wonderful. Well, greetings, everybody, and it's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to share my screen so you can see the presentation. And can you see my screen now?
No,
Okay,
we
hold on.
don't see
Sorry
it.
about that. How about now?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful, excellent. If there are any comments, please stop me at this. I hope this is an interactive discussion more so than a presentation, because the material that I'm going to present is very textual, and I want to make sure that we're going at a pace that you're comfortable with. At the same time, if you have questions, let's stop, answer those rather than try to come back. So we've had this is the third Housing Task Force meeting. The first one was held in early June. You will recall we presented and had a discussion on the housing element update, the requirements, why we're doing it, what are some of the opportunities and constraints. We went through the community's profile, both in terms of quantitative information that was available through data and maps, but also information that was gathered from community surveys and various focus group meetings that were held. And all of this was to establish needs, to understand what the housing needs are within the community. We had a brief discussion about focus areas, primarily looking at downtown corridors and some of the larger tracks like Costco and the mall along the freeway. And then after the first task force meeting, we went into the visioning workshop. It was a 4-day visioning workshop. Many of you participated in it. That was held in late June. And at the workshop, we discussed concepts related to growth, preservation, and renewal, particularly how much do we want to grow, what are the locations where we want to grow, and what is a pattern of development that we want to grow in. Coming out of that workshop, we had the second Housing Task Force meeting. This was held in July. And in July, we talked about analysis of the current housing element programs, policies and programs that we have in place. We reviewed some of the constraints related to providing housing in Montebello. And we also reviewed affirmatively furthering Fair Housing Act provisions and their applications and some of the requirements in these housing elements in this 6th housing element cycle. And then we had a fairly detailed discussion on some of the sites, and we went through some of the sites, and that's sort of where we left off the last meeting. So what I want to do today is coming out of the visioning workshop and the first 2 task force meetings is to now focus, now that we know what the community vision is, where it wants to go, how much, and what pattern. The question is, how do we get there? What policies do we need to have in place? What goals we need? What policies we need to have in place? And what programs we need to have in place that will help us accomplish our vision. So the discussion today is about goals, policies, and programs. And then just to complete the visual that you're seeing in front of you, we're hoping to go to council on September 8th to give an update on the visioning workshop, the outcomes, as well as the housing element update. And then following that, we will have a draft on the street so that it's available for everybody to look at and comment, and that'll be roughly about a 20-day period. We're hoping to get the first draft out to HCD end of September, if not end, maybe the first week, depending on the comments we get from the public and how much time it takes to make those edits and adjustments. And then the 60-day period begins with HCD. We had a brief discussion with HCD earlier this week, and they told us that before they give us a letter at the end of the 60-day period, they will have a brief phone call with us so that we'll know what the comments are coming from HCD, Housing and Community Development. So we can respond, we can start preparing on those before we get written comments. So our goal is, and our hope is that by December, we should have the first draft of complete housing element that has been reviewed by HCD and have the supporting CEQA documentation ready in December. And we're hoping to have the adoption hearings in January with the Planning Commission, considering adoption in January at the first meeting, and then following that City Council meeting either in January or early February, but no later than February 12th, because that's the threshold and the deadline by which we have to get the housing element updated. So that's roughly the schedule. That road that we've been on, and the steps that remain to complete this assignment.
Mr. Rangwala, what did you say
Yes,
has to
ma'am.
be updated by February 12th?
The housing element is due in October, but there's a 120-day grace period, and that grace period expires on February 12th.
Mm.
So by February 12th, we need to have an adopted housing element plan, and getting it before council before the February 12th is an important milestone. We're at this point, I think, targeting the February 8th meeting with the council.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, I wanted to just kind of, as a bridge to the last meeting, the housing task force meeting that we had where we discussed sites. I wanted to give you an update. We have been working feverishly on those sites, examining them very carefully, and having many discussions with staff, as well as housing and community development staff. And we've made some adjustments. So I want to quickly walk you through some of those adjustments. Just to recap our obligations for the 6 cycle RHNA allocations in very low, low, moderate, and above moderate, and the total units that will be required. And I need to, there's a typo here. It should be 5186, not 5174. I need to correct that. So here's a table that we presented, or a version of a table that we presented last time. And if you recall, we were well over the required capacity of 5,186 units. We were roughly around 7,000, over 7,000 units. We have, since that time, taken a very close look at all of the sites. We've rearranged them into 3 categories. The first category is units that don't require rezoning. And by that, what we mean that these are sites where housing units could be provided under current existing zoning ordinances, under current zoning regulations. They don't trigger zoning requirement or rezoning requirement. The second category is these are units that are in the pipeline. So they're on the drawing boards at City Hall, various stages of entitlement. Some have just been submitted, some have just expressed interest, some are being processed, and some maybe at planning commission or various stages of the entitlement process. And then there are sites that we've identified that are opportunity sites. These are sites that are not zoned residential. So these sites will require rezoning. And so those sites are all allocated as housing opportunity sites. So 3 categories.
Kaiser, I'm sorry. On what column did you indicate that? Are we seeing this right now in what you're showing on the screen? Is it in a specific column or it's not indicated?
Yes. Thank you for asking that question. So these are rows. So very first row, that you see at the top, and I don't know if you can see my cursor.
I can't see your cursor.
Yeah, I can't see it either. Okay, let me just describe it. So the very
Kaiser, one question for you. Can we take the time, even if it takes 5 minutes until we see the cursor? Let's figure this out, because during the last few meetings we couldn't see your cursor, and it's a little difficult to follow. So could we just give it a shot, maybe play a little bit, maybe give it 5 minutes?
Yeah, sure. No, it won't take 5 minutes. Let me
Okay,
see
great.
that.
Thank you. I'm seeing something. I'm seeing a cursor.
So
Okay.
I have to, you're going to see more than my cursor. You're also going to see my desktop. But that's okay, as long as you can see the screen, and you can see my cursor. And I'll extend this all the way over. Okay, so what I'm pointing at here is the first row. The first row, which is units that do not require rezoning.
I see that.
Okay, and then the second row that is shaded is pipeline units.
Okay.
So that's the second category of units. So we have clubbed these sites under 3 categories. The first category is units that don't require rezoning. The second one is pipeline units. And the third one is housing opportunity sites.
Okay.
And the fourth one is accessory dwelling units. And accessory dwelling units are citywide. They're not site specific. And we're projecting to continue the trend. There were 7 units approved, accessory dwelling units approved in the past year, and we're projecting that for the next 8 years to yield 56 units. We think it would be higher, but at this time we're putting a conservative number down and just projecting 56. So the sites are clubbed in these 3 different categories. And what I would like you to focus on is this very last column here. And that's the column that suggests the distribution of those units. The distribution between very low, low income, moderate income, and above moderate income. And if you see the total at the bottom, you will see that our requirement.
Excuse me, Kaiser. Sorry to
Yes.
interrupt. Is there a way you can zoom in on that table further? It's almost impossible to read it.
Yes, yeah. Almost.
Yeah, let me.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, so we're looking at the bottom of the table now, and we're comparing these numbers. So what you see here on the right hand corner are the RHNA allocations. This is what we are obligated to provide within the next 8 years to show that these units can be built. So for very low income, the obligation was 1,314 units. We are at 1,317 units. So we are above that threshold for very low. For low income, the requirement was 707. We are currently at 712. So again, we are above that threshold of requirement. For moderate income, which is 80 to 120% of AMI, it was 777 units. We are 817 units. So we are way above the requirement there as well. And then For the above moderate income, the requirement was to provide 2388 units in the next 8 years. And in this case, we are 3157. So we're comfortable and above and meeting all of the requirements of RENA with our total. Our total is 6,003, and the RENA total that was required is 5,186. I want to again point out this is a draft table. This is going to go through a lot of adjustments once we start having discussions with the council, as well as the housing and community development. Once they get to review this, they will examine our assumptions, they will question them, and there'll be, I assume, some iterative process where we refine these numbers. But at this time, I think we're sitting good in a good position, demonstrating how we're meeting all of the different categories that are required. Now, I think Melanie had a question, and she pointed out about the TCAC map. So we have generated the TCAC map. The TCAC is the opportunity map. This map shows different colors, and the different colors represent the resources that are available. So for example, the blue color is a high resource area, and the green color is low resource area. So the units, again, we're working on a map, and I wish I had a map, but we just finalized the numbers late yesterday, and we're still in the production stages of the map. But the sites are distributed citywide, and some of the sites, or most of the sites, I want to say, are located in the high resource areas. And our strategy is twofold. We are locating the housing units in the high resource areas, and in the low resource areas, our strategy is to increase the resources. Increase the resources such as by providing new parks, by providing access to transit, connectivity to regional jobs. So the green areas, we're hoping through the general plan efforts, through the parks master plan, through the downtown specific plan effort, that these green areas will also become in the short term, in the near future, blue areas that will be high resource areas. So the entire city will have access to the resources. But regardless of that, the units are distributed citywide. Majority of them are being located in high resource areas. So that's the update I wanted to give you. We have taken a deep dive at these different sites. We've added a few new sites, and I'll give you a couple of quick examples of the new sites. There's a 25 tiny home site on Flotilla Street, and I'll give you a little more detail as I go through the presentation on that project that the city is proposing. That it's partnering with various different partners and proposing 25 units, tiny home units next to the Montebello station. There are various other sites that we've added in the downtown area. These are city-owned sites and sites that are vacant. So we've added those to the list, to the housing opportunity site list. So the table has been refined, and I just wanted to update you and also tell you that this is a dynamic table. The next time you see it, it might be different than what is being presented today to you. But this is the latest one that we currently have.
Kaiser, if you could go back to that other slide. Yeah. So the map, I see that you have 3 numbers. Is that like a rating of economic, education, and environment? Is that what those scores are? Are they scores or something?
It's a collective.
Okay.
It's a collective assessment of all of those areas, and is being reported in different shades. So as I mentioned, the high resource areas, the areas to the north, are the ones that have the most access to resources, economic resources, access to education resources, and environment and health.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I ask a question too?
Yes, ma'am.
You said that the majority is located in the high resource area, but I only see a very small portion. That the high resource area is the dark blue, or do you mean most of them are located in the moderate and high resource area?
Right. So if you see some of these high opportunities, housing opportunity sites, for example, the Montebello Hills project, which is listed here as
Montebello Town Center, the shops.
Montebello
Oh.
Phase 2, which is 851 units. That's right here in a high resource area. The Costco site, which has been identified, a portion of the Costco site, which has been identified for additional units, that is 350 units. That again is in a high resource area. The shops at Montebello, which is identified for 1,868 units. That is again in the high resource area. So collectively, the larger projects, the project that's coming up or that's been discussed at the golf course, that again is in the high resource areas. So the larger sites where the largest chunk of housing is being allocated are in high resource areas. The smaller sites that are distributed citywide tend to be in the lower resource areas, such as downtown area, for example, which is shown as green, and some of the areas in South Montebello, which are again shown in the green color. Marlene, does that answer your question, Commissioner Marlene?
Yeah, it's the moderate and the higher resource. For the golf course, being a potential site, how does this intertwine with our general plan in terms of losing open space?
Well, obviously the general plan is looking at citywide open spaces, and so is the Parks Master Plan. And by the way, that project that that is mentioned here in this table is something that is still being vetted and is still being discussed. And it doesn't cover the entire golf course area. It's just a fraction of the golf course that has been allocated for housing. But as we look at citywide, we're looking to increase the open spaces. For example, in South Montebello, through this general plan effort and in this housing element, we've identified a 6-acre new site that will be located in the DePaul Center. So DePaul Center is roughly about 12 acres, and if that were to be converted to housing, to provide for affordable housing as well as market rate housing, half of that site would be dedicated as a park. So a 6-acre park that would be added to that location. And then above and beyond that, we're looking at a variety of other places where new public and private open space would be added as part of the development process.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I'll move on. So just to reiterate, the community vision that was developed at the visioning workshop, where we talked about a number of issues, particularly related to housing. There were 3 main topics that we discussed. We want to make sure that home ownership was accessible and affordable. We wanted to welcome new homes rather than fear them. And this is, I know it's a loaded statement, but what we mean by that and what we are saying there is new homes should add value. They should fit in within the context and not result in impacts, but increase the value within the area by providing and meeting a need, but also fitting in well So rather than fearing them, welcome them. And the part of that is developing objective standards, making sure you have a good and robust review process that makes sure that the new homes coming in add value to the area. And then not everybody is going to be able to afford homes as we move forward, particularly as home prices have been rising astronomical rates. Renting is going to be largely something that many of us will have to contemplate in the future. So we want to make sure that renting is safe, clean, stable, and affordable. So three-part vision, and then the guiding principles coming out of that were to protect against displacement and poor housing conditions, to have mandates, to have requirements, at the same time have incentives to stimulate creation of new affordable houses in resource-rich areas. So those areas that I suggested were blue or shades of blue rather than in low resource areas. Adopt objective rules to streamline the development review process, to avoid over concentration of investment and gentrification by geographically distributing. So when you target one area and you raise the density in that area, you sort of targeting all your resources in that area, and you but if you spread them out and you do it citywide, then the tendency for gentrification is far lower than if you just target one area. So we are recommending that rather than concentrating in one area, that it be spread citywide. Increase supply and reduce displacement by allowing housing to be in commercial corridors, because commercial corridors currently don't have many people living there. It's largely commercial, so you're not seeing any displacement happen in those corridors, and that's part of the overall strategy. Build housing where it also best supports cities' environmental, health, and social priorities. So it's because we're working on the general plan and the specific plan, we have a very robust opportunity to accomplish this, because we can look at integrating housing into a variety of other needs, community needs. Help households access and afford private homes, and prevent homelessness before it starts. So these are guiding principles. Again, they're draft that we are basing our goals on, and we're basing and creating programs based on this vision and these guiding principles. So goals, policies, and programs. 3 simple goals. One is to conserve what we have and preserve and enhance what we have. So conserve the housing stock that you have, preserve it. The second one is increase production to improve affordability for current as well as future residents. And the third one is to increase housing choices for diverse cultures, lifestyles, abilities, family structure, and income level. So fair housing, make housing accessible to a larger population. So very simple 3 goals. And around these goals, we've organized the policies and the programs. So I'm going to walk you through the different policies we have for each one of these goals, and then the programs that we have that will help implement the goal and get us to the vision. Okay. So the first one is conservation and preservation of existing supply, and the policies are listed here. By the way, a lot of these slides are text heavy, and if you've seen some of my presentations, I tend not to use a lot of text, but this is very intentional, because I want to, if you are interested in reading this, I want to make sure that you have the entire text available, so you can provide feedback. But more so, this presentation will also be available online. So I want to make sure that the text is available and accessible to you, as well as others that cannot participate this evening. So it's very intentionally text heavy. I'm not going to read all the text, but if there is something you want to focus on, please stop me, and we can go through that specifically. Okay. So these are policies and that are sort of the bridge between the vision and the guiding principles and the programs. So I want to talk about the programs that we have for conservation and preservation. The very first one is code enforcement. Code enforcement is essential in ensuring that the quality of housing is maintained as safe is free of violations and allows existing housing stock to be maintained over a long period of time that is in compliance with all of the safety codes. The city has an aggressive code enforcement program. This is an existing program that you have in the current housing element, and we're proposing no change to it. This is an important component of preservation. So no change to this policy that you currently have in the housing element. Related to that is the home improvement and rental rehab program. Again, this is an existing program that you have, and we're not proposing any changes. This is where the city offers amortized and deferred loans for addressing health and safety issues, code violations, overcrowding, accessibility and maintenance and repairs. There's a senior grant program that offers up to $10,000 to very low income senior for home repairs. We're projecting that in the next 8 years, about 40 units will take advantage of this program. And it's funded through home and CDBG money. So again, an existing program, we're not proposing any change to this program. The third one related to the goal of conservation and preservation of existing housing stock is preserving the at-risk housing. And in this cycle, in the next cycle, in the sixth cycle, from 2021 to 2029, you have up to 372 units that will come at risk of converting to market rate. And this includes the Beverly Towers, the Casa, La Merced, and Montebello Downtown Plaza. They have expiring affordability contracts that bring them at risk of conversion into market rate. So in this case, the city will maintain and annually update the inventory of at-risk, continue to monitor the status of this and work with the owners and tenants and nonprofit organizations to ensure the long-term affordability of these projects. And in cases where this conversion is going to happen, then there are other steps that the city can take to ensure that the at-risk units mirror as closely as possible to the Section 8 housing program. So again, there's 372 units in 3 projects that come at risk of conversion that need to be monitored during this housing period. And we've identified the steps required to monitor and to take action if any of these become ripe for conversion. Okay. Section 8 rental subsidy is an existing program that you have in place. We're not proposing any change to that program. It's managed through the county, Los Angeles County Housing Authority, and it's funded through HUD as well as general fund to manage the program. Homeless prevention. This is we've had following discussions with Veronica and Melanie and her staff at Gateway City COG, and they have helped us develop some of these programs, and some of the thoughts that they shared have contributed to what we are presenting today, both in this case as well as something that I'll present later. But the homeless prevention is a series of timely interventions that can reduce the likelihood that someone will experience homelessness. And then for those that are homeless, providing them with necessary resources and support to stabilize their housing options, enhance social inclusion, and reduce the risk that they can become homeless once again. So there are a number of things that the city and its partners can undertake, from supporting the agencies that are providing services, the nonprofits, to providing grants for people who are late on their rents. Because if you're late on the rent and you are at risk of becoming homeless, then providing that assistance might be better to preventing somebody from becoming homeless than the cost involved in providing the services when they become homeless. So grants for utility payments, security deposit for rental housing, creating a toolkit with resources for legal services, tenant landlord issues, benefits, workforce development, and looking at opportunities for economic employment, economic development, encouraging local businesses and to hire people that are either homeless or formerly homeless, providing job training, becoming the employment site for CalWorks program. The city can adopt an empowerment ordinance to encourage local hiring of homeless people and formerly homeless individuals in city-supported contracts. So if the city is having contracts, then encouraging those contractors to hire local homeless individuals. The funding source is CDBG and Home. This is a new program that we are recommending to the city. This is the Operation Stay Safe program that I was talking about earlier when we were looking at the site selection list. It's on Flotilla Street. The Montebello station is north of this location. This is the parking lot for the Montebello station. One corner, the southwest corner of the parking lot, has been allocated about 150 feet by 130 feet, has been allocated to provide 25 tiny homes. These are 64 square foot shelters. They have common restroom facilities, common dining facilities, and storage, common storage facilities. So this is again a multiple partnership between San Gabriel Valley, the city, and I believe there are a few other partners, primarily for people who are experiencing homelessness.
Kaiser, can you please make your screen full screen now?
Okay. So those are all the programs that we have identified for conservation and preservation of existing housing supply. So before we move on, are there any questions on these programs?
I have a question. On this project you're showing right now, I know this is a partnership between the city and the organization. I don't know if you know the answer, but is the goal just to provide the units only, but are there going to be supportive services that go along with the units? Like social worker or management services?
Mr. Malin, I don't have the answer to that. Perhaps planning staff might have more information. Jessica, do you know?
Yes, I'm happy to chime in on that. This facility will have supportive services, including mental health, health service. There's going to be social workers basically connecting people to resources.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if, am I muted? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, can you?
Okay, great. Yes. All right. Jessica, so this Operation Stay Safe, is it going to be put before council? Has council approved this? Is the
Yes.
community,
Yes, council has approved this. The city is receiving a grant from the San Gabriel Valley COG. So thank you to the COG and our member on the line today for that support. This actual development, there were a couple of public meetings about this, announcing the deployment of it. And so it's well underway. It is supported and approved by city council already.
okay.
Okay, I'll move on, and we can always go back to the previous programs. So the second goal is after we preserve and conserve and enhance the existing supply, we also want to increase the supply, the production of housing, both for current residents as well as for future residents. That involves increasing the zoning capacity, but we also want to avoid concentration of investment in one particular area to avoid gentrification. We want to make sure that that's happening citywide, particularly in the high resource areas, and encourage attainable housing to be built where it can support multiple objectives of the city, economic, social, and environmental priorities, and increase the supply and reduce displacement. One example of that is, again, if you're planning your housing in your corridors where you have underutilized commercial properties, you're not displacing anybody. You're adding new housing units without any displacement happening there. The city shall develop objective design standards and streamline the development review process and permitting process. So these are the roughly the policies, and we can go over the programs. The first program is to adequately accommodate all of the sites that are being called out by WENA. So our obligations is for 5186. We're proposing slightly higher than that number at this point, but that's again likely to change. We want to make sure that our zoning regulations are in place that can accommodate these units. We have a number of sites that are not currently zoned to allow for residential uses. So we're proposing that the rezoning will be roughly completed within 1 year of the adoption of the housing element. So that will be roughly January 2023. There's a number of opportunities a number of funding sources that are available through LEAP grant funds that can be accessed to facilitate the rezoning process. The accessory dwelling units, city again has built 7 units and a total of 22 units in the past 6 years. We clearly see a trend in Southern California of that number increasing in the future, but at this point we're taking a conservative approach and just projecting that 7 units continues. One of the things that we're noticing is those 7 units that were built, and many of the accessory dwelling units that are built are primarily built for moderate and above moderate, and we want to encourage the production of accessory dwelling units for low income and very low income. And this is again an idea that came out of discussion with Gateway City COG and their program manager that's working on housing issues to look at ADUs as an opportunity by allowing the homeowner to defray the expense, the construction cost, by accessing the Section 8 funding. So the housing unit that gets built, the accessory dwelling units that gets built, has a covenant that restricts it to low income or very low income. and is accessed through through Section 8. So the income, the landowner gets income from the Section 8 funding that comes with the tenant. It's a win-win situation where the landowner gets full reimbursement. The tenant who is paying a subsidized amount through Section 8, and the city is getting a unit that is covenant restricted, deed restricted for low income and very low income. So this is a program that has been tried in a number of cities in Southern California and in some cities up north as pilot program, and it has this is something that we are also recommending that the city can pursue. Inclusionary housing and density bonus, these are two items that were on your existing housing element, but they were not carried out. These are incredibly important because one requires housing, the other one encourages housing. The inclusionary housing, the zoning ordinance requires new development to provide some percentage of affordable housing on site. And this is a great way to get distributed affordable housing throughout the city. So when a project is built, some component of the project has to be affordable, or they can pay an annual fee. The density bonus gives developers an incentive that if you build affordable housing, you can build additional units on the lot. So it's a stick and carrot approach that I think works together, and we're recommending that the city revise the zoning ordinance within a year of the adoption of the housing element to adopt an inclusionary housing ordinance, inclusionary zoning ordinance, and a density bonus requirement, density bonus ordinance. The next one is a series of zoning amendments that are triggered by state legislation that the city has to, number of cities, all cities in California have to amend their zoning ordinance to bring them into compliance with the legislation. And the change in legislation is legislation that talks about low barrier navigation center development, reducing the barrier to provide shelters for temporary living facilities and permanent housing, parking requirements for emergency shelters, addressing supporting housing, requiring supporting housing in all zones, including mixed uses, and then employee related housing, employee housing for 6 or fewer employees, as allowing them at single family residential zoning districts. Beyond that, we are also proposing that the city will amend its zoning ordinance to allow for smaller units, so that the tiny homes that we talked about, or single room occupancy, which tends to be less than 250 square feet, which is 250 or 350 square feet, which is currently the threshold that's allowed in the city. Allowing lower threshold, allowing lower size single room occupancy allows you to meet more of the need which has been expressed in the demographic. When you review the demographic, not everybody has a family of 4. There are many people who are single and they don't need a yard in the front and a large home. So providing a variety of housing types, including ones that are at the smaller scale, the tiny homes and the single room occupancy, will increase the options that are available within the city. So besides this, we are also working on the downtown specific plan, where we are examining the.
Kaiser, we have a question in the chat. Mari is asking, is this density bonus proposal in addition to the required state density bonus for affordable housing, I believe SB 35.
No, this is bringing it in compliance with SB 35.
Right, and it would be a specific zoning ordinance that is tailored to our city. So that the state has its own density bonus law, but this would be something that's tailored to our community. And we would outline what concessions the city's willing and amenable to give.
Correct. So besides these zoning ordinance, these amendments, we are also reviewing the city's current regulations for parking, for open spaces, for setbacks, and heights, because all of these collectively can also pose as constraints to housing. So in the downtown, we have an opportunity through the specific plan. And then once the general plan is adopted, when we look at objective standards citywide, we'll examine these standards and review them for their impacts on facilitating housing development within the city. I'm seeing 5 chat comments. Are there any questions in the chat? Let me see if I can open any of them.
No, there's no chat comments, additional ones.
Okay, all right. So I'll keep moving then. No, going back, sorry. Montebello Community Assistance Program. This is a new program that the fire department has been implementing now for over a couple of years. This is funded through the San Gabriel Valley Council of Government, and it's a program that allows the fire department and its partners to connect clients with a variety of services such as food, shower assistance, substance use disorder assistance, medical assistance, mental health assistance, dental assistance, and housing and social service assistance through their firefighter, paramedic, social work, field-based case management, and housing navigator program that they have in the fire department. So this is a new program, and we're recognizing that we are programmed in housing.
Kaiser, before you move on, I'd like to make a correction to the previous statement I made about the Operation Stay Home. It's actually going to City Council October 13th of this year. So there were 2 community outreach meetings held in gearing up to the public hearing on October 13th. Sorry
Yes,
about that.
that's, yeah, because, you know, I did see a city council meeting where they were discussing the tiny homes and they were showing, you know, all the properties of them and all that, but I didn't get the sense that they had voted on something.
You're correct.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the constraints that we have identified, and this is not just Montebello, but it's all throughout Southern California, and California is regulations, is zoning regulations and discretionary approval processes that tend to be time consuming, often unpredictable, and can lead to denial of housing projects that often meet standards. Because there's a discretionary element involved where the city can say, no, thank you, we're not interested. And in return to that, what we are suggesting is the city can adopt clear and precise standards that are objective, which involves a planning commission, which involves the community, which involves the city council in the production of those standards. And then once a project meets those standards, the process is streamlined for those projects that conform to those rules. So what we're recommending is the RHNA, AB 1397 says that RHNA sites that require rezoning to accommodate the lower income shortfall that we have. So for example, those sites that are not zoned on the list currently for housing, all of those sites, if they provide 20% affordable housing units, then they are subject to by right approval. That means all they need to do is get a permit, a building permit. Okay, so what we are proposing is that that is applicable to those sites because they're not zoned correctly. But for other sites as well, we can extend and have consistency and say that if you're providing, if you are not within one of those sites, but if you're providing 20% affordable housing, very low income housing, then you can have an administrative approval, which is a director level approval. The director reviews it, and the director works with and engages a town architect. This is a trained person that is trained in spatial review projects and works with the director and reviews the project and renders a decision. Now the director informs the planning commission of projects that are being submitted, the projects that are approved. So if anybody in the community, including the planning commission or the city council, feels that they want to have a hearing on that project, they can say, okay, please call this for a hearing. We would like to have a full hearing on this, and they can have a full hearing. But for projects that are meeting the ordinance, that are adding value, that meet all of the requirements, that meet all of the objectives, the director's approval can serve as a tool, as a mechanism to streamline the development review process. So we're recommending that the city adopt objective design guidelines, design standards, not guidelines, design standards within 1 year of the adoption of the housing element. And related to that is the next program, which is to streamline the development review process. Now, oftentimes we just do things because that's how we've always done things. We've never stopped and examined or try to untangle this process that we have in place. So what we're recommending is, and we've already talked to planning staff, is to map the entire process, map all the steps of the process, and then have a public discussion with the planning commission, with the city council, and identify those steps that don't add value or add very little value, and just eliminate them. And oftentimes, because part of what we do is organizational assessment. And when we go into a city and we do an organizational assessment like this, we find at least 20% of the steps are unnecessary, redundant, and just add time without adding any value. So those steps can be completely eliminated, and they free staff time as well as planning commissions time to focus on the important items rather than focusing on process that adds very little value to the end result, to the outcome. Again, we are recommending that for projects that involve more than 4 units, that a town architect be brought in. This town architect, and it could be, doesn't have to be one, can have a list of town architects that are approved, and you can rotate them. But these are people who are trained, and when they talk to developers and their architects, they can look for value-added propositions that create better sites, better projects for the city, address comments, address concerns, and look for smoother process and superior outcomes. So that's trying to streamline the process and increase the value through town architect. This town architect will be funded by the developer. The developer pays upfront to the staff. The staff hires a town architect and works with the town architect, and they process the application. Energy conservation. This is a new focus and a new requirement in the current cycle. The city, through Title 24 California Code of Regulations for energy conservation, new residential project is already pursuing this, and the city encourages affordable housings to use passive or active energy saving features such as solar panels, efficient appliances, efficient building materials, and continues to assist developers who are pursuing funding for these types of development. So we're recommending that the responsible agency for building and safety and planning division work closely together. There's a variety of funding sources that are available for this effort that can be channeled and brought to bear on different projects. Okay. Any questions on increasing supply before we move on to fair housing? Let me ask you, is this making sense? Because these are programs that are intended to help us accomplish the goal, the 3 goals that we've set out, and at the end of the day, accomplish the community vision that was created at the visioning workshop. So are these the right programs? Some of them are already in place. Some of them are continuing efforts. Some are new.
Kaiser, yeah, it's making sense. You know, to me, it's making sense. My only concern, you know, is that the cities, it's almost like local control over how a city is going to be developed. It's almost like it's going to be taken away. It's the sense I'm getting, right? It's like, not completely, of course, but, you know, there'll be very little local control. Somebody wants to come in and, you know, erect some buildings and multiple, you know, units and parking. It's almost like, you know, the city is going to lose a little bit of that control. That's all. It's just a concern that that I see, but yeah, I'm not sure, you know, the state is mandating certain things, and I don't know if all the cities are just, you know, accepting this. Maybe Melanie can speak to that. That is one of the questions I had for you, Melanie. Like, for example, the little tiny homes, you know, is Montebello going to be pursuing this? It looks like we are. I mean, neighboring cities, you know, like I would say, like, let's say San Marino or Arcadia, are they also doing this? And it's, you know, are they going to be also giving up their, you know, local control over development? If you could speak a little bit to that, I'd appreciate it.
Sure. You know, there has always been a push and a pull in housing element law, you know, and state requirements between, you know, the state mandates versus local control, right? That this has been a tension in this area of policymaking for decades, ever since I started in planning, you know, more than 20 years ago. And it's certainly the tensions have only, you know, increased. And so there, and I think that I think it really so much of this stems obviously from, you know, this enormous concern about the rising cost of housing, the lack of affordability, and how that impacts so many facets of life. You're right, in our future, you know, in our economic future, our kids' future, you know, our elders' future. So it's this you know, intense pressure, you know, only growing because of this crisis in affordability. So I think that what you're seeing is that you know, that there certainly are new mandates from the state that are being, you know, imposed, and that is something that in this state, you know, we do. That is a road we're on. You know, that there is, the legislature is taking very strong action around housing. It has been a focus in the last, in multiple legislative sessions. Really, I think like 16 and 17, huge housing packages passed, and it's only continuing. And so this is really where we find ourselves in the state. I think that folks, something that to bear in mind is that the policies that Kaiser's talking about and the programs in the housing element are the methods that Montebello has to exert control, right? So that when he talks about, I was glad to see the program, for instance, around objective design standards, for example, a way that within, that Montebello, is going to decide how it wants to zone sites and what level of density it's going to allow, and where Montebello wants to see new housing built. But then also, it's going to be really important to articulate design standards, because that's another piece of the puzzle. So, there's all these, I think folks are feeling like there have to be a lot of tools in the toolbox and a lot of different approaches to address all of these challenges we have in housing, affordability, and in our homelessness crisis. And so just working my way toward your question about the tiny homes project. That is an approach that is being tried and tested throughout the state. And I wish I could speak, and it might be that the planning staff is going to think of more local examples, because you've been thinking about your project that you're considering here. I know that, for instance, in the city of Los Angeles, council has been seeking to find a site in every one of the council districts for a project like the one you all are considering, and maybe not as high quality as what I'm seeing in terms of what you're considering, but that they're looking to implement. And there's going to be one going in my neighborhood, in Eagle Rock, and on a parking lot. And so it is a technique, and that is being really considered, and folks are really trying to find sites so that you can, really, as we say, just try to take advantage of every tool in the toolbox to try to solve this problem. Because I heard someone say recently, there's 50 ways in which someone can get into homelessness, right? There's 50 reasons somebody can get into homelessness. So you got to have 50 tools at your disposal to get them out of homelessness. So, anyway, don't want to go on and on, but I don't know how much that helped. I hope that helped a little bit. It is attention, and other states do it differently. And then we do it, and this is in fact, the process that we go through, and it really is stemming from this just ever worsening, challenge that we have of affordability, and how it's really affecting our society here.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you.
Madam Chairman, can I just reinforce what Melanie said?
Sure.
I think it's to her point. It's incredibly important that you're not losing control. It's just a shift of control, and it raises the focus of planning and crafting of regulations. So your control happens in creating a plan, a community vision, and then adopting design standards. But once you adopt that design standards, then the process can be streamlined for projects that are complying with those standards. So I think the focus shifts from being reactive to an increased focus on planning and creating the right and clear and precise and objective standards. So it's very important at this stage that we are, which is developing a general plan, developing a downtown specific plan. That is where the community can have the most impact and the most control. But once those controls are set, and if somebody wants to play by the game, then it's only fair that they be allowed to.
Kaiser? Did
Yes,
you
ma'am.
pause? Okay, no, because you paused suddenly. I wasn't sure what was going on. Okay. All right. Yep.
Shall I, shall
Um,
I, shall I move on? I have just a few more slides.
okay, proceed.
Okay. Okay, so the last one is addressing fair and equal housing opportunity. And in this case, we want to make sure that through inclusionary housing requirements, density bonus incentives, the city will facilitate new affordable housing within high resource areas. So providing access to all residents to high resource areas and allowing that mobility to occur within the community through general plan update, downtown specific plan, parks master plan. The city will expand transit, parks, open space, public facilities, and jobs to underserved areas. So it's a two-part strategy. We are encouraging housing in the high resource areas, but also in the underserved and the low resource areas. We're increasing the resources that allows the city then to really develop citywide, and then avoids a problem of displacement, avoids a problem of gentrification, because it's happening citywide, not in a particular area. The city will promote greater awareness of tenant and landlord rights and obligations, educate residents about ownership, and promote economic mobility, avoid displacement and low-income households where necessary, and then address discrimination where it occurs. And the number of programs, the two that you have currently in place, and we're proposing to continue those. The housing, the city contracts with the Southern California Housing Rights Center to provide response to landlord-tenant relations concerns related to that, providing counseling, and as part of this program, brochures, flyers, information is made available in a number of public locations so that people are aware of their rights. And during this planning period, we're recommending that the California Housing Rights Center hold workshops within the city to discuss discriminatory practices within service and companion animals, reasonable accommodations, and reasonable modifications. Again, most of these are already programs that you have in place. And we've taken a look at the numbers. They're fairly robust in that there's a need, and this agency is meeting that need. So we're proposing to continue that program. And then this is again was in your existing housing element, which was not carried out. And we're proposing that be carried out. It's a reasonable accommodation program, adopting ordinance and processes that would make housing accessible to people that have physical challenges. I think that's the end of all the programs. Happy to answer any questions on any programs or any feedback that you have on what we have discussed today or what we have discussed in the past.
I have a question. When you mentioned the policies that were not implemented and the ordinances that supposed to have been passed, which housing element are you referring to? Because we passed one last year, and which was behind like 3-4 cycles, and we approved that housing element recently, but when was this happening that none of this was implemented when it should have been?
Well, we talked about this at the last meeting. A number of programs that you have, if they're unfunded or if they're not identified on your budget, or you don't have the staffing to carry those out, they will not be carried out. And what you're referring to is, and what I'm talking about is the 5th housing cycle, which was, as you correctly point out, just adopted a little over a year ago. So you haven't had much time to implement that. Typical housing cycle is 8 years. So I'm not surprised that a number of these programs have not been implemented. Well, we had serious dialogue with staff, and I think the staff is committed to carrying these programs out, and have identified certain things on their annual budget, and that's why we're suggesting that a number of these steps will be carried out in a year. The rezoning will happen in a year. The inclusionary housing and density bonuses will be carried out in a year, because they have specific task items in their budget. They have and dedicated staff. The city currently doesn't have a housing manager, but I'm told, and Jessica might have more update, that they're going to get that position filled very shortly. So having the staffing to carry those tasks out is incredibly important, and having the funding available to carry those tasks out is incredibly important as well. So we could have added a dozen more programs, but we haven't. We're very strategic about what the city's capacity is, and want to make sure that we have a few important programs that can be carried out during the 8-year cycle.
Thank you. And when this housing element is adopted, and I know we'll be, we'll be out of the red, we'll be up to date. We had to do this, we got a shortened time frame because of our delinquency in the past with the housing element. When this gets adopted in February, how long until the next one has to start again, the housing element? Or did they give us that information yet?
Yes, 8 years. If you get it done by
8 years?
Jessica might have better information than I do. But my understanding is if you get it done by February 12th, then you are on an 8-year cycle. But if you are if you're not able to do that, then you're on a four-year cycle, just as the last housing cycle. You just got it adopted a year ago when you had to get it done several years back. Jessica, do you have?
Yes, if I may add to that, I believe that we would need to adopt our housing element in time for at least, I think, 2 cycles for us to be able to get back on the 8-year track. So I believe we have to do it before that February 12th deadline in order to get us closer to that 8-year cycle. But I believe we still may be on the 4-year cycle, but we'll have to dig in a little bit more into that.
Thank you. And the 5,186 units, is that expected? I know we found potential sites that, we can accommodate these many units. In what time frame? Is it that 8-year time frame, or is it the 3-year time frame?
This is an 8-year time frame.
So as of 2021, Montebello has to make good faith to try their best to provide these 5,000 some units. And in our housing element, we show that we are able to accommodate it through these sites that you have identified here. Whether or not it gets implemented or not is a different story, but I just want to clarify, because I do feel like this information that we're speaking of should consistently be brought up whenever we have a housing project up for public hearing. And I know staff has been good about that. They'll bring up some of this data, but pulling out the graphics as well, and maybe some of this audio to educate our community on how important it is for us to do our very best to comply with this and to do our part.
I think that's an excellent point to
Mhm.
continue to remind ourselves of the planning effort, the 8-year or the 20-year planning effort when you are in a reactive mode, dealing with a case that is right before you, to focus on the big picture of how this fits in the larger puzzle and some of the requirements that you have. But I think the finer point is something that we need to check, because this plan that is drafted and the obligations that we have received from RENA are for 8-year timeframe. So we need to confirm, and we will do that in short order,
Yeah.
if this has to be updated in the next 4 years, and what that would mean, because if you're creating a 4-year plan, then it needs to be for 4 years, not 8 years. So we just need to clarify that.
Jessica, so what Marlene said is an excellent point. So do you think that this spreadsheet that we're looking at right now is going to be available on our website? So if we ever need to refer to it, or if we ever have a bunch of residents saying we don't want that development on our street, we can pull this up or point to it, or is this going to be on the website?
Absolutely, Chair. Once this plan gets adopted, it will be available on our website, just the way our current housing element is available on the website. And to add to that, every time the Planning Commission and City Council reviews a development proposal, including housing, they always have to make a finding of general plan consistency. And so that's where we link your actions to what's in our general plan. In the housing element is one of the elements of the general plan. So we will always make that connection for you in the resolutions when you adopt an ordinance, or I'm sorry, when you approve a project, a housing project.
Okay. Okay. Commissioners, any questions? Anybody else? Mr. Cuevas?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the moves and the opportunities that the state has made for local cities to be able to adopt ordinances that improve or they increase the amount of housing, affordable housing, is something that a lot of cities have taken advantage of. I work in LA, as some of you may know, and LA just last year issued permits to build over 3,500 ADUs alone. And that's a lot compared to, I think Kaiser said we issued 7 permits here in Montebello. And I know that this proportion in terms of size, but even 3,500 ADUs and the multiple multi-unit apartment buildings that are being built in LA still has not helped us reach the shortage of housing there. So I keep reading articles about economists that say that we are not catching up with the housing needs in the U.S. all across the U.S. And so making any effort to increase the development of housing in our city would help, I think, overall. And I know that, I'm one of the ones that worries about having too much development near, our houses and traffic and everything. But I don't think it's just going to grow out of control and that we're going to be pushed to just build. It doesn't happen as much as it feels like it is. But again, just, my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalia, any questions, comments?
Thank you, Chair. No, I'm just very, very excited to see all this come together. I have no comments at this moment. Thank you.
I'll make a quick one. So the Senate Bill 9 and Senate Bill 10 are right now being drafted. And one of the things that they're proposing is that the single family home will be able to request that their lot be split in 2. Okay, so we just have to think about this. All right, it should be in the back of our minds. It could happen. So now if this passes, they'll be able to split their lot into 2 lots and then put up an apartment building in the front or the back plus a home in the front. So a 1 lot could potentially turn into 4 different units. And you know,
Alexandra,
yes, yes,
Alexandra,
ma'am.
put 6 units.
6 units? Oh my goodness, because of the
As,
ADU?
yes, because 1 ADU, 1 junior ADU, and then the house.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Could be
So
sold-
yes,
and it could be sold, the parcels can be sold separate from each other too.
yes. So there is a move, you know, to push towards this because, you know, how do I say this nicely? So yeah, there's a push. Some people don't like the single family home. There's a philosophy that the single family home is something that occurred via theft, you know, that is a philosophy that exists. And so, you know, there is a push to change single family home zoning. And then next thing you know, we're gonna, you know, we could completely change what America stands for in an essence. You know, everybody dreams, everybody thrives and aims for their single family home with their little white picket fence, their little lawn. And so we are, I think we're at a point in time where we could that's going to change, and it's going to look totally different. So I don't know, it's just something to think about. And yep, it's the Senate Bill 9 and 10, and I know Senate Bill 50 failed because that one was super aggressive, so they introduced 2 more that are a little milder. But you know, that is the move. I do see the move that the single family home, they sort of want to restructure it and change it and put very dense housing, and then just change the fabric of what our country is, you know, what everybody aims for. So anyway, that's just my thought, and that's it. Anybody else?
Big houses are overrated.
I don't know. I love mine. I do.
Yes, but but as a homeowner,
Mhm.
you get whether you want to split. So no one's gonna force you
True.
to split a lot or to create these ADUs, but your neighbor could potentially do that.
Right,
Or-
right. Yes.
And then you'll be like, hey, I'm the only one. So that's something to know. And the other thing that we should add is that the eviction moratorium is gonna really affect our unhoused population. And so, you know, we really need to think about, do you want to see these people in a trailer parked on front of your house? Or would you rather see a little bit more density in your neighborhood and more people house? I mean, these are just conversations
Mhm.
everybody should be having. And I'm glad that you're bringing those bills up, but definitely I encourage everybody to read up on these bills and to really just think about single family zoning and the future of our population, how we're going to house everybody.
Mhm. Yeah.
Chair, I see a hand up by Melanie Smith.
Melanie, go right ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to say just a note about the 2 bills. SB 9 did pass another major vote today, so it is moving along. I think it would be in sort of at a conformity phase between, because it did pass the assembly today. So it is moving, and it is a bill that would allow, you know, a lot split, as you said, and in a single family, and it would allow you know, a duplex. It would allow a unit and an ADU and a JADU. You know, I would say that we've always had those products in our neighborhoods, right? These are actually very old kinds of housing products that have been in our neighborhoods for generations. So I mean, I think that it's very new to look at a change to single family zoning, but that look is happening across the country, and a lot of you know, other states are taking this on. So did want to note that yes, it is moving on. It seems as though through the process. And then SB 10, just to say that SB 10 is as well, but that SB 10 is really an opt-in bill, so it's not a mandate. So SB 10 is a bill that offers a city the opportunity to write an ordinance that allows, you know, a zoning, it's hard for me to even explain how this bill will work. I think a lot of people are trying to figure out how the bill might work, but that it would allow, you know, an upzoning to occur. But again, it's an opt-in bill. It's not a mandate. Just wanted to add that. And then if I just got one super fast other thing, just to say that it could be useful. It's just something to consider. HCD does, you know, as you're moving through your process of developing the element and getting to where you want to, you know, you're getting closer to submitting, HCD does publish the comment letters that they provide on housing elements on the website. And so it may be a helpful thing to take a peek at some of the ones. One of our jurisdictions, Whittier, did get their, you know, already has had a review and got a letter. So it might be interesting to you to see, you know, what the comments have been. There's just a huge amount of attention to the site's analysis. Ironically, this is what we're looking at on the screen. Huge amount of attention to that and to the reasonableness of the assumptions that are made about the reasonable capacity of the sites. So that's something that, you know, it seems like really coming up. And then the really close look at two other things, of the affirmatively furthering fair housing analysis, and how the analysis was conducted and conveyed. And then also the description of the public outreach and the public engagement that's been conducted. And I know you all have been having conversations with HCD and you know that, but just wanted to reiterate that's you know, that we're starting to see the letters, and it can be helpful to actually see how HCD is reacting to elements. Thank you.
Oh, Alexandra, you're muted.
Thank you. Kaiser, thank you very much for your presentation. It was very thorough, and I appreciate the spreadsheet, and I will be referring to it quite a bit. So thank you very much. And at this time, I guess I'd like to adjourn. It's 8:07 and the meeting is now adjourned. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Night,
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you.